Greetings and welcome to Pilot, its new features and tips and tricks for technology coordinators. I'm Forrest Fisher. I'm the director of the Educational Technology Support Center at ESD 105 in Yakima, Washington. Our agenda today is going to include a best practice step-by-step, going through the various tools and features that Pilot has for technology coordinators to best support their district. None of these things are required, and it's not required to use Pilot in this step-by-step fashion, but it's a suggested way to do it. We'll also talk about the technology use in classrooms model, commonly referred to as the tiers model, both the tiers 1, 2, and 3 that are related in the columns, and the technology implementation plan that's related in the various rows of the model. We're going to get into that model in greater detail and look at the progression view of it as well. And then on the video, I'm sorry, but there won't be time for questions, but you will see my contact information on the last slide, and you're welcome to contact me through any of those means if you have further questions. There are handouts for the tiers model, the progression model, the PowerPoint that we're looking at, all those kinds of things. And if you'll go to this particular website and click on the link that says more in the article that's about this presentation, you'll find links to all those handouts very easily. Now, using Pilot, like almost any other tool, involves user permissions. Some people are administrators, they have full access, and others just basically use the self-assessments and so forth. In Pilot, there are 3 specific user rights. One is the right to view the reports to see the results. Secondly is user management, that is to add, remove users, change email addresses if necessary. And then thirdly, to assign permissions. On my screen, you'll see access to all of those permissions. So if you think that you should have those permissions and you don't seem to have those and your screen looks different than my screen, you'll probably first want to contact your regional or state director to get permissions assigned to a district leader. And then those district leaders can assign permissions within their district as needed. So the front of Pilot should look something like this if you have those permissions as I described. The user management permission involves this link for managing profiles. Reports is under Enter Self-Assessment, and permissions is also under Manage Profiles. So here's our step-by-step for technology coordinators. Again, this is just an example of best practice. None of these things are actually required. And we will start in the Manage Profiles area. So you're going to want to kind of work your way up the list of tools there. Okay? And some of the first ones are pretty self-explanatory. We're going to head toward tools for fixing domain name typos. I also make a note that schools can utilize a separate tool called Pilot Junior, which has a self-assessment for 8th grade students in it, and we'll soon have one for 5th grade students as well. Students access this with a school level password, and this link indicates where those can be set. So these are the areas we're going to be focusing on today. So the first step would be to correct any domain names that might have been entered incorrectly by users. And to use this tool, it's fairly straightforward. You simply select any incorrect domain names from the drop-down list, and then type in the correct or new domain name, and then press Save. Here's a quick little example of the kind of things that can happen. People will put in spaces or dashes instead of dots, or it would be UA instead of US, or .com, all kinds of things instead of the correct address. Okay? Most of the time people will spell their own name correctly, so it's very often that just by correcting the domain name you will make the email operational. So this would look something like this when done correctly. Would have selected one of the incorrect emails from the drop-down list and typed in the new one right here, and then click this button to replace the old domain names. And it would take a minute to do that throughout the Pilot system, and then that typo would be corrected. And you just go through that process until all your typos are fixed. So that's the first tool. The second tool depends on email addresses, which is why it's second, and this is to upload a spreadsheet file of the educators in your district. The form of the file needs to be as a .csv, and in case educators are already in the system, in case they already have an email address, then they will not be added. If the email address is new, then they will be added into the system. Okay? If the email address exists at Pilot, and you have chosen to include the school or job field, then that information is going to be updated. So it's intended that you can update your teachers and staff as they move around from building to building, or they might change jobs simply by uploading a file on an annual basis or every 6 months or something like that. Okay. It's important that when you enter this information that what you put in your file under job and school must match exactly what we use at Pilot. And that information is provided for you in this tool. So in fact, I'll show you that. So here is the actual tool, and if we click on the upload spreadsheet file, this is where you choose and select the file, and then you would choose to upload it. Okay. Now, everything that is below there are the directions, okay, including what the file should look like. These are the only 3 fields that are required: first name, last name, and email. They must be spelled exactly like that. And then here are school settings. At the ESD, I don't have any schools in my district. You will see yours spelled exactly the way they need to be. And then these are the job spellings. And so those are the choices that you must use. So it's a fairly straightforward tool to use, and the directions are provided underneath. Okay. Then you have kind of an optional step. There are other ways to edit users. We provide 2 tools for that. One is an update job position school active status tool that allows you to change those settings 50 teachers at a time. So you can go through and move several teachers to a different school or deactivate them or whatever you want from quickly within that tool. The other way to do it is to update the users individually, and the access to that is at the top of that page. And you select the user, update the information. It is also possible in that screen to combine accounts. I'll show you what that looks like. So again, I'm going to go up to the main tool. Here we are, and now we are updating job position, school active status. That's the one that allows you to do 50 at a time. And then this allows you to update users individually. Okay. So if I'm looking at users here, and I see that there are 2 by Brian here, this could be 2 different accounts. So I look at one of the accounts here first to see what district, so forth, he is in. Then I'm going to go back. and look at the other account. Okay, and that does seem like it's the same person. He used a personal email in one case and a school email in the other. And so down here at the bottom, you can go get the user ID from the other account and combine it with this account, or vice versa. But that will, and then clicking this button will allow you to combine the accounts. So again, you wouldn't take this one because that's this account. That would be, but you would go back to the other account. Get this user ID. And then go to the first account. Paste that in. There we go. And clicking that button would then combine those two accounts. All right. So that's pretty much how you can edit and or combine accounts individually using these the string of letters up here. The last tool we're going to talk about, or actually I guess I'm going to mention at this time a couple of new features. One is that in the past we've had library media specialists as a unique job type, and they are now combined in teacher and instructional staff. There was reasons why they had to be separated due to reporting requirements for the federal government. Those requirements have gone away, so it doesn't make much sense to have them being a separate category. It also was directing them to take a self-assessment that dealt with just proficiency, and most of our library media specialists are very much involved in teaching and have the same sort of challenges and situations and resources and so forth that a classroom teacher does, and so it makes most sense that they would be in that category. This opens up a new category for proficiency self-assessments, and there's now one called the classified and non-instructional staff. So right now there's a self-assessment for teachers and instructional staff, for classified and non-instructional staff, and for administrators, which basically should take care of everybody in your district. So you can't have everybody be involved in the pilot survey at one time. All right, so once you have your users in and their email addresses are correct and so forth, now it's time to announce the self-assessments, or in other words, ask them to take them through an email message. We have a tool, again, called Send Announcement Email Message to Members, with sample messages that you can edit. There'll be a link to the tool. It'll be a username and password provided if you choose that option. You can filter it down and send a message to just teachers or just administrators or just a single school, or however you would like to do that. Okay. All right. Now, that tool looks like in real life right here. And again, since I'm the system administrator here, I have more options than you do, but I can select a district. The date range refers to when they have been active, so old members will not be contacted with this. Again, you can select a subset of just the teachers or administrators. And there's a default message. This last one includes directions to take all 4 of the self-assessments. The If you're sending something to just teachers, you could just ask them to do both teachers' self-assessments. And I'm not saying that they have to do both of them, but the message includes directions for both of them. So I have selected just teachers, and a message to that effect has been put in here. This is completely editable, so you can change that however you wish. Here you can include their username and password, and most of the time people would do this. You can attach a file if you want, and since this is the very first message we're sending, we don't have to worry about follow-up messages yet. And we would click First Step, and so here are the users I've selected, and if I use this button to check all, they will all get a message, or I could select people individually and send them a message. They will not get a message unless they are checked, and you click the button at the bottom that says Send Messages. So that's how the tool works. Now, as I said, after some staff have taken a self-assessment, you might want to send a reminder to people. So, for example, I would click for just teachers. I would have it check both the proficiency surveys for teachers and check those who have not taken the survey yet. Okay. And then send them a message reminding them that that's what they need to do. Or you could send a message to those who have taken it, thanking them for completing the task. Below, there are explanations of every aspect of the tool and example settings that you would choose to send an announcement to teachers or administrators or classified, or to send a reminder to teachers, administrators, classified. Okay. So again, Pilot tools, the directions are provided below the tool itself. Okay. So again, after you've sent out your announcement message, you probably want to check the reports to see, how things are going. You arrive there by going to the home screen and then enter self-assessments, and you'll see reports and tools. You can filter out by school or by job and by date, however you wish. So you can look at results from a year ago, results that are current, results from 5 years ago, however you would like to do it. Okay. There are basically 3 kinds of reports. General results are the actual numeric calculated results from the self-assessments. The completion section involves who has completed the self-assessment and who has not. And then lastly, you can download the data in Excel files. And there is a new feature here, what we call an available technology review. This is completed by teachers and instructional staff only because it has to do with sharing what technology does that instructional staff person have available to them in their classroom or instructional space. It's only 10 questions, and they can indicate, do they have a computer for their own use? Do they have computers for student use? And if so, how many? And various questions like that. Very easy to do. And then that information is provided for you in all the reports. And we find that a number of districts are finding that feature to be very helpful to connect how they are using technology with what technology they have available to them. And so after you've checked the reports, you might send follow-up messages, send a reminder message to those who have not yet completed the self-assessment, or send a thank you to those who have. And that's the end of our tour. I hope you found that helpful. Greetings and welcome to this video about the TIERS model, which is sometimes referred to as the Technology Use in Classrooms model, intended for the assessment of classrooms and the use of technology, and also to be used as a planning model for future purchases and training implementations and things like that. The TIERS model is the educational and philosophical foundation for the technology integration self-assessments at the Pilot tool. This resource was developed back in 2003 and has been developed and updated since then. And the reason it was developed was to answer the question, what should we be doing with technology in the classrooms? We receive this kind of question all the time, and everyone This model was intended to help to answer the question that administrators and teachers often put to us: what should we be doing with technology in classrooms? We know we should be doing something, we know it's important, but what should that be? And we wanted to provide a research-based or effective practice-based answer to those kinds of questions. We also wanted this to be applicable to all teachers. So the things that are in the model could conceivably be done by any teacher. It does not include things that are specific to one subject area. So for example, there's no science probes listed in the model. There's no technology related to health in the model. But those are still very valid and very helpful technologies. They're just not in this particular model. We wanted to provide a common terminology for technology planning and for teacher growth. We wanted this to fit on one piece of paper, and so sorry about the small font. And we really wanted to focus on the teaching and learning process rather than just buying products. Okay. So this is what the model looks like, and there should be links next to where you found this video that would allow you to download and print this model for yourself. Okay. It has 3 columns, and the first column is identified as Tier 1, Teacher Productivity Station. This column is describing teachers using technology for their own administrative or productivity purposes, such as doing grades, doing attendance, creating handouts, finding resources on the internet, all those kinds of things that teachers typically do without students being there. Right? If a teacher has a classroom website, they're probably using it to post grades, classroom information, a calendar, and those kinds of things in the administrative part of the classroom. Tier 2 is describing technology being used for large group instruction. So teachers are involved in using projectors and document cameras and doing one computer classroom strategies, or doing presentations, or bringing in videos, and instructing the class in a large group fashion utilizing technology. There's also an aspect of this that describes student use of technology for their own productivity. So if teachers are assigning students, be sure and type this up. Be sure that this is done in this particular report is done in a PowerPoint. That's all for their own productivity, and that's placed here to differentiate from student-centered learning. And Tier 3 is describing that very topic, where students are involved in inquiry-based or research-based, project-based types of activities, where they're inventing products, creating resources that might be used by others. And so in this particular tier, there's a lot of different types of activities that can be done, but it generally always has a focus on an open-ended project that the students are involved in. And so that's a quick introduction to the 3 tiers. The model also has 4 rows, and the first row is describing the best practices or the things that you would see in classrooms that are involved in each of the 3 tiers. The second row involves the typical classes or trainings that a teacher might need in order to accomplish the best practices that are listed above. The third row involves things that are done by a school district kind of in general to support the use of technology. So to provide a network, to provide technical support to keep things working, to provide administrative expectations for technology use, all these sort of required baseline types of activities that school districts need to provide. And then lastly, the fourth row involves the resources, the actual hardware and software that's typically needed to accomplish the various tiers. Now below that, there are some sample costs, and these are just for discussion purposes, perhaps to help administrators do some planning. There's also listed under Tier 2 some supportive technologies, such as an interactive whiteboard or classroom response systems, clickers, a classroom audio system. And while we're certainly not saying that every classroom needs to have these types of activities, they are very helpful. There is a growing body of research that supports their use, and so we've indicated that they are part of the model but under supportive technologies. Now these rows are placed here in a very specific order because we wanted to focus on what the learning strategies were, what the instructional strategies, the best practices first, and the actual resources, the hardware and software last. But it's also intended to indicate that all 4 of these things have to be in place in order for a technology program to be successful. It's not enough just to buy resources and then not provide any training. It's not enough to know what the best practices are and then not provide the network or the tech support that to make that happen. If any one of these 4 rows is missing or weak, the chance of success with that technology program is very limited. Getting a little deeper into the details of the progression through the tiers model, we might describe teachers involved at Tier 1 and getting involved first, and then at some point when they're ready, they would start utilizing technology in large group instruction, and then a smaller group would be involved in using technology in student-centered learning. Now, sometimes I'm asked, does it mean if a teacher or a classroom has a Tier 3 identifier, does that mean that's a better teacher, or there's a more highly skilled teacher in that classroom? And that's not what Pilot measures, and that's not also what the tiers model is talking about. The tiers model is talking about specifically how technology is being used. Okay? And so it does not mean that teachers who are using those strategies are necessarily more skilled with technology or better instructors. Okay? What it does mean, however, is that there is a body of research that supports the use of student-centered learning and the use of technology in there. There's also a growing body of research showing that technology used in large group instruction can be effective in improving student learning. Okay? There's not much research that shows that typing things up in Word means students will learn better, or doing a grade book will mean that they learn better. So there's not much research support for Tier 1, but there are effective practices that, that support the use of technology in that fashion. But generally, as you move from left to right in the tiers model, there's an increasing amount of research that supports the use of technology in that fashion. All right. So I'm also going to provide kind of a sample step-by-step through the tiers. The order is definitely not required in any way whatsoever, but it is kind of typical for most teachers. It generally goes from easy to hard, from simple to complex, and that sort of thing. And in the progression model version of this is what Tier 1 might look like, where teachers start by entering grades and attendance, largely because they have to by district systems, and communicate with email. Then they might ensure that they know how to save files and organize those and get to network resources, how to create their own documents and save them on their computer, and then lastly to provide and find lessons and ideas and resources on the internet and bring those into the classroom. So again, it's not required that teachers go through this fashion, but if you have a teacher that is communicating with email and doing grades online, and that's all, then maybe some of these things might be the next step to lead them toward. In Tier 2, teachers typically start with a document camera, and they might move on to directly including websites in their lessons or multimedia and other video types of resources. They also might create PowerPoints or other similar sorts of presentations to help support the visual aspect of their lessons. They might also then use inspiration software or other sorts of tools to capture brainstorm activity and capture student comments during lessons. And then lastly, they might use interactive instructional tools such as whiteboards, clickers, and interactive slates and those kinds of resources that allow you to interact with the material and also to capture what you have presented visually for students in a permanent fashion. In Tier 3, you'll see that there's no line going across the screen. It's a circle, because Tier 3 can be accomplished in a lot of different ways. It could be involved in blended classrooms with students completing online discussions or students watching videos as homework. This is commonly referred to as a flipped classroom. They might have curriculum pages that they're using to follow to complete projects. They might be posting their own projects online. Teachers might be using a web quest or creating graphic novels and stories or other kind of non-traditional writing methods. So again, there are a lot of different things that can be utilized involving technology that is supportive of the student-centered learning model. In most of these cases, it has been our experience that the teacher involved has some sort of classroom website or classroom web-based resource where they can post the resources and the links that the students are going to need and to manage the whole project. That's probably the place to start when attempting to move into doing a student-centered learning Tier 3 types of classroom activities. And the last thing that this model is attempting to show is that when schools or districts move towards a one-to-one model, that is, there's one sort of technology device per student, that's logically done at the end or after these student-centered learning types of instructional models are implemented and the staff is comfortable with that. These devices make this kind of activities, the Tier 3, very easy to do. but teachers have to adjust their instruction significantly in order to implement this in a successful manner. And so, in other words, it's best to do these things first before you head to that. So here's my contact information. I hope this has been helpful, and I trust that you'll be able to use the pilot site and the TIERS model successfully in the future. Hope this has been helpful, and have a great day.